Aš žurnalistas Vytautas Bruveris ir mano pašnekovas Jungtinių Amerikos valstijų Stanfordo universiteto vizituojantysis mokslinis bendradarbis Gabrielius Landsbergis.
Tai, kad Ukraina mums nupirko laiko, mes turim kiekvieną dieną dėkoti, mažiausiai po 2 kartus ir atsiminti iš tikrųjų, ką mes per tą dieną padarėm. Nes mes gavom dar vieną dieną dovanų, ir to gausim galbūt dar vieną dieną dovanų. Ir ar ta diena buvo išnaudota maksimaliai ar ne? Ar mes ėjom su LRT kovoti? Ar mes stiprinam savo gynybą? Va čia yra pagrindinis klausimas.
Prisidedu prie šitų padėkų ir Ukrainos kariams ir dėkoju tada mūsų abiejų vardu ir visiems mūsų žiūrėjusiems ir klausantiems. Linkime tų ramių ir gražių švenčių.
Kurioziška, kad mes Ukrainai sumokam mažiau negu Rusijai perdami jos naftą. Ir sugebam kažkaip tą paaiškinti, kad čia viskas yra normalu.
Pone Bagdonai, ar jūs turite atsakymą, kas atsitiko, kaip teigia politiko, kad vakarai, kurių ekonomikas kartu sudėjus gauname 60 trilijonų eurų, tai viršyje kartu sudėtus Rusijos, Kinijos ir Irano BVP, nusileidžia valstybei, kurios BVP prilygsta Ispanijos BVP. Kodėl vakarai sudrebėjo, o Putinas taip įžūliai grasina ir visi tą priima labai rimtai, bet vis tiek toliau kalbų didesnių?
Stiprus vakarai nėra labai stiprus ir silpni politinė valia. Nėra Čerčilio šiuolaikinio. Karas Ukraina, Rusijos karas Ukraina, tai yra prieš mus. Ukrainos pergalė, tai yra Rusijos sutriuškinimas, Rusijos valios, karinės valios kariauti sutriuškinimas, palaužimas, mūsų saugumas ir taika mūsų, tai yra visos Europos. Pradedama suprasti grėsmė, tai yra priemama, kad karas Ukraina tai nėra vien ukrainiečių, tai yra mūsų.
Aš noriu užduoti klausimą, pasvarstymui turbūt tokį, kuris man asmeniškai daugiausiai kainuoja nemiegotų valandų, daugiausiai kainuoja darbo valandų ir apskritai turbūt mano yra ašis.
Poreikiai Ukrainos, tie, kaip čia minimalūs, pagrindiniai poreikiai būdavo, kitais metais yra apskaičiuota maždaug 70 milijardų, su viršum 70 milijardų. Čia 90 milijardų per 2 metus, taip? Vis tiek reiškia, tai yra, nepakankama. Ir prisiminkime, kad Ukrainai turi būti finansuojamas ir karinis aspektas, karinė parama, ir ekonomikos pačios išlaikymas. Kaip čia pats matai, kaip čia dėliojasi tos proporcijos? Koks tai yra nepakankamumas, kuris jau dabar aktyviai?
Taip, tai biudžeto nuostoliai Ukrainos yra milžiniški. Nuo karo pradžios. Ir tos nuostolius kompensuodom atskira programa, vadinasi Europos kompensacijos parama Ukrainai, ir tai yra tiesiog Europos pinigai pervedami tiesiai į Ukrainos biudžetą ir iš tų pinigų yra finansuojami mokesčių atlyginimai, tiesiog tai yra infrastruktūros palaikymas, būtinieji valstybės poreikiai. Nes be šitos paramos Ukraina tiesiog neišgyvena. Arba jeigu turi sakyti tada visiškai karą, nefunkcionuotų valstybė. Tai dabar mano žiniomis šie pinigai yra pasibaigę. Ir yra didelė tikimybė, kad bus net nepagunda, bet su būtinybė tuos naujai paskolintus pinigus, vakar paskolintus pinigus, būtent juos naudoti ne ginkluotei įsigyti, o tiesiog biudžetui palaikyti. Kad kvėpuotų valstybė. Tai šiaip beveik yra neišvengiami nuostoliai kariniai.
Let's have a look at Zelensky's list of heroes.
It is obvious that American business can become the locomotive that will once again push forward global economic growth.
Often there are conditions that the globalist establishment requires before doing the types of deals that Zelensky describes. You will have seen our previous videos in which we talk about the IMF and the World Bank and the kind of leverage that they require in order to give what they call loans, but seem essentially like opportunities to take control of new territories and economies. And this is no different. You'll be astonished. Part of the formula these days is to present a situation as humanitarian or a crisis that needs necessary resolution. Then, in effect, powerful elite interests benefit from it. Have that formula in your mind, and then we can use it together to critique situations as they unfold.
We have already managed to attract attention and have cooperation with such giants of the international financial and investment world as BlackRock, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs.
These are not unequivocal forces for good. JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and BlackRock are not charities. They're not philanthropic organisations. Even philanthropic organisations aren't that philanthropic. Who's next in there? The billion.
Well, I can tell you that the UK will be sticking by Ukraine for as long as it takes, and we will be there for the long term. And we will also want to be helping you to reconstruct.
Reconstruct? That's the reconstructing. And here we are taking the money out of Ukraine. Here's Ursula von der Leyen explaining to the assembled leaders and corporatists and big tech giants at Davos that they are required to rebuild Ukraine. You might think, I've heard that name, Ursula von der Leyen, before. Yeah, you have. It's when Albert Bourla was texting her directly, doing deals for billions of, coincidentally, that didn't pass by a council of approval.
We raise the necessary investment for reconstruction, and it is a perfect opportunity to take investment and reform to pave this way for Ukraine towards the European Union. And what we need is not only investment with the public sector, but the private investment and your knowledge.
Gotta have that. Gotta have private investment and, of course, knowledge as well.
You know so much in your respective fields, so we need your knowledge. We need every hand on board to really move forward with repair, relief at the very beginning, but also reconstruction.
Gotta reconstruct it.
The people of Ukraine really deserve.
So there you go, there you see everything, tying the morality, the necessary duty we have to help one another, to help the suffering Ukrainian people, with the interests of the establishment elite. As long as you can converge those two ideas. This is the agenda. Ukraine was ultimately a place that was too resource rich and had too strong a ties with Russia historically, politically, and even ethnically in some cases. We're not having it. We're going in there, we're destabilising it, we're going to provoke Russia until they engage militarily, then we're going to go in there and corporatise it. Why wouldn't they say that? That's not a very popular story, is it? In September 2022, Zelensky symbolically rang the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange via video stream. The Ukrainian leader declared that his country was open for business, with more than $400 billion in investment options. At the same time, Zelensky published an editorial in the Wall Street Journal calling on Western corporations to invest in the future of Ukraine. The Ukrainian government cited corporate executives at Google, Alphabet, and Microsoft who urged more Western companies to buy up the country's assets. And there it is, just literally there, in plain sight. In December 2022, Zelensky held a video conference with billionaire Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager. Zelensky's office said that BlackRock will advise the Ukrainian government on how to structure the country's reconstruction funds and is coordinating the efforts of all potential investors and participants in the reconstruction of our country. This means that under Western tutelage, Ukraine has essentially privatized and outsourced its economic policy to BlackRock, one of the world's most powerful corporations. During a recent WVF session in Davos, Larry Fink spoke of his plans to help coordinate billions of dollars worth of reconstruction financing for Ukraine, saying he hoped the initiative would also turn the country into a beacon of capitalism. There is no question that as you rebuild, there will be good economic incentives for real return and real investment, he said. In one way, I'm almost tempted to just go along with it and invest in it. Zelensky's government has imposed some of the world's most aggressive anti-worker policies, deprives around 73% of workers for their right to union protection and collective bargaining. How's that good for Ukrainian people?
That is already pretty bad, right? However, what we're going to be reacting to in this video shows that Russian propaganda might actually have hit a new low. Man to convince Russian men to voluntarily enlist in the Russian army in order to fight in Ukraine for financial gain. The absolute cynicism of what we're going to watch today is actually unprecedented in Russian propaganda. So without further ado, let's strap in and check out the first one.
Алиночка, можно к нам минуточку? Я, конечно, сильно извиняюсь. У нас опять снижается закон. На тебя вся надежда.
Bro, what the fuck? The point of this video is that if you want to buy your daughter a new iPhone, you have to go fight in Ukraine, and you will sort your life out, you know? I just think it's kind of funny that, like, they're pointing out, like, real issues that exist in Russia, you know? How people get their wages held up and not paid because the economy is in a terrible state right now, obviously. They're using this to promote voluntarily enlisting in the army.
Забирай.
Ты знаешь, я как только...
Ну ты так точно никогда не накопишь. Да, знаю. Чуть старше нас был, когда последний.
I actually haven't watched this one before, by the way. My first time watching this with you guys. This is getting even better. So not only is he not getting paid in his job, but he's also a military veteran. I guess he's implied to be a veteran of the Chechen War or something. And he has no money. It's quite curious, isn't it? It's quite curious why a military veteran has no money and is getting by with scraps, you know? What makes anybody believe that the people who will fight for Russia now will be treated in any other way?
Рисковали с ним. Папа много раз рассказывал. Он пашет на заводе, а там постоянные задержки.
It's insane. I wonder why, guys. Once again, I wonder why he's not getting paid, and I wonder why he didn't get remunerated for his, you know, for his incredible heroic service in the war that's not being named here. I understand that a lot of his logic is like not all the way there, you know, they can't really connect the dots, but the people who make this have to be smarter, right? Right?
Мой папа тоже ветеран, год не мог привыкнуть к жизни. Но потом ушел добровольцем, сказал, не может тут сидеть, пока наши ребята там. Он, конечно, страшно переживал, но... Помогает.
So the implication here is that this other girl that is also a military veteran who's also struggling with finances, so he went to Ukraine. The implication that a military veteran has to fight a war again in order to make scraps, that's fucking crazy. This is insane. Who the f made this? I'm not even Z, and I'm getting triggered. There it is, he's made the decision. He's going to Ukraine. I guess, I'm fucking... What's this supposed to signify? 6 months later. I can't, look, I can't even comment on this. Yeah, they cut this one short, but basically, this is the full version, this is what happens in the end. Okay, so let's check out another one.
Достал меня такой мать. Неделю назад я поменял, сегодня 8 рассыпалось.
Нормально, поменяем завтра. Садись, отдохнем.
I know the storyline of this video, yes, okay? But as far as I understand, the formula of every single one of these videos is the same. They show like regular Russian people that have regular problems that people really run into. People are impoverished and just, you know, trying to get by. They show those real problems and then turn the message into, well, if you want to fix those problems, if you want to fix your money problems, it's time to go to Ukraine and make some money. Let's just keep going. This is insane.
Ну, еще всем надо собрать скотину, покормить. Яйца для продажи собрать. Козу подойди. Свеж еще, стань давай. Я не буду, я бахать, достал. Мужики, добровольцы. Надо менять что-то. Скотину вам продать будешь?
Каким добровольцем? Че, крыша поехала, жить не надоело.
Dude, guys making perfect sense. I agree. First character in one of these propaganda videos that like I don't immediately despise from the start, you know?
Мне надоело в 4 утра вставать, работать во дворе. Потом в 6 утра идти на эту гребаную почту за 10 тысяч в месяц. Потом в надежде ехать в город, продать что-то из домашних, чтобы денег немного заработать.
Dude, is this... Are these videos really Russian propaganda? Like, what the f***? He's talking about his, like, low salary in the post office. I'm honestly speechless. These videos are literally, like, criticizing the Russian government.
Каждый вечер мне предлагаете нажраться в хлам, вам самим не надоело.
sometime later, okay?
Серега, WVFFLIFE уже не ждать.
Здорово. Да ну брось. Новое купил.
Твоя?
А я. Вы как?
Все нормально, стабильно. С нами?
Да не, я вот дом приехал продавать. Будем ипотеку в городе брать. Ладно. Понял?
Давай. Красавчик.
Prezidentė Dalia Grybauskaitė pagerbta aukštų Vokietijos gynybos ministerijos apdovanojimo Manfredo Wernerio medaliu. Apdovanojimas prezidentei skirtas už ypatingus nuopelnus siekiant taikos ir stabilumo Europoje, stiprinant ES bei geros kaimynystės ryšius regione. Apdovanojimą prezidentei įteikė Vokietijos gynybos ministras Borisas Pistoriusas. Medalis įsteigtas 96-aisiais. Jis skiriamas už išskirtinį indėlį į Europos taiką ir laisvę.
Kai po 14 metų Krymo okupacijos pavadinau Rusiją, viena pirmųjų tarp kitko politikų vakaruose pavadinau, kad Rusija demonstruoja teroristinės valstybės požymius. Aš buvau kritikuojama, kad per aštriai kalbų ir pernelyg suaštrinu situaciją tiek vakaruose, tiek pas mus Lietuvoje. Šių dienų paskutinių įvykiai parodė, kad situacija Rusijoje gali labai greitai keistis. Na, o matant šitos visus tarp nusikaltėlių aiškinimus santykių, aišku, kad ši šalis yra nenuspėjama, labai pavojinga ir bet kada gali virsti agresiją ir prieš NATO.
Ukrainoje dar viena naktis paženklinta Rusijos raketų ir dronų atakomis. Volodymyras Zelenskis skelbia, kad per vieną iš smūgių pataikyta į kraujo perpylimo centrą Charkivo srityje.
Skirkime galvoti, kad ir kiek tokių atakų rems Rusija, jie nieko nepasieks. Mes vis tiek ginsime Ukrainos laisvę. Ukraina.
Jei kiekvienas partneris padėtų Ukrainai taip, kaip padeda Lietuva, tai mūsų pergalė būtų garantuota.
Ir kada nors koks nors ruso batas čia pradės vaikščioti, tai aš manau, kad mes čia turėsim daug ukrainietiškų batų.
Brangieji, aš noriu pasidžiaugti tuo, kad mes einame į priekį ir aš manau, kad tikrai Ukraina bus NATO narė. Mes neturime teisės. Mes neturime teisės elgtis kitaip, nes šiandien ta kaina, kurią moka Ukraina, yra pati didžiausia kaina, tai yra kraujo kaina. Ir jie perka mums laiką, kad savo kraujo kainą mes galėtume pasiruošti ir duoti tvirtą atkirtį Rusijai.
The NATO to sign to promise no more NATO enlargement. That was what they sent us.
So it seems that had they been willing to sign a treaty to not expand NATO, this war could have been avoided. So what is the advantage of expanding NATO? That's one question. Secondly, of course, many of you are aware that at the climax or the conclusion of the Cold War, pledges were made to not expand NATO into former Soviet territories. We all know this now, don't we? It's not something that's broadly covered because, again, it's not favourable to the preferred narrative. And most importantly, as far as I'm concerned, why are the legacy media, when reporting on the subject of this ongoing war, this drain and strain on human resources and indeed human life, this decimation of Ukraine, 500,000 people dead so far, why are they not saying, of course, NATO have now acknowledged that they were warned that if they continue to expand, then Putin would invade, and they did it anyway. So who caused this war? What is the reason this war is happening? So it's not like a war that began all of a sudden. It's part of the ebb and flow of history. And perhaps you would agree with people like Jeffrey Sachs that this war has come about to a degree as a result of the unipolar agenda of centralist American interests. Because they have an agenda to deplete Russia, because they have an agenda to create a unipolar world where Chinese interests and Russian interests are challenged, they were willing to agitate Russia to the point of war. And the reason I mention that is because, of course, we're continually told this is a humanitarian crisis. Remember what you're supposed to believe. This is what you're supposed to believe. Russia, basically for no reason, started to wage war on Ukraine. It's terrible, it's egregious, Putin is the new Hitler. And again, this is not to advocate Putin, it's not to advocate for the actions of Russia, it's simply to say if the intention, the aim, the goal was to end war, these are probably the sorts of things you have to take into account, I don't. Let's have a look at Jeffrey Sachs' perspective so we can understand this in a little more detail. How did we get into this war and how do we get out of it? During the disastrous Vietnam War, it was said that the US government treated the public like a mushroom farm, keeping it in the dark and feeding it with manure. The heroic Daniel Ellsberg leaked the Pentagon papers documenting the unrelenting US government lying about the war in order to protect politicians who were embarrassed by the truth. A half century later, during the Ukraine war, the manure is piled even higher. According to the US government and the ever-obsequious New York Times, the Ukraine war was unprovoked, the Times' favourite adjective to describe the war. That is continually what you were told. If you only watch the mainstream media, in testimony to the European Union Parliament, Stoltenberg made clear that it was America's relentless push to enlarge NATO to Ukraine that was the real cause of the war and why it continues today. Here are Stoltenberg's revealing words. Again, the background was that President Putin declared in the autumn of 2021 and actually sent a draft treaty that they wanted NATO to sign to promise no more NATO enlargement. That's what he sent us and was a precondition to not invade Ukraine. Of course, we didn't sign that. Well done you, because now Ukraine is being devastated, 500,000 people are dead, and the situation shows no sign of improving, and actually no one at all benefits from it except for the military-industrial complex and centralist authoritarian systems that want us to be in a perpetual state of fear and unable to question authority in our own lives because we're terrified of continual pandemics and what knows some will benefit.
Jie reikia pasikliauti, esi ne vienas, nes jie priešuose yra bėda, o kai būna draugų neturi. Tai tiek, aš manau, draugų mes nesame istoriškai niekada turėję. Tai tiek saugumo, būnat NATO narys, Europos Sąjungos narys, niekada nesame turėję ir taip gerai niekada istoriškai nesame gyvenę.
Turbūt visi tebe norime taip gyventi iš tikrųjų, tai ką turime padaryti, kad tas gyvenimas mūsų toks tęstųsi?
Geras gyvenimas kaip Levis džinsų prašyta, čia skirta visą tai vakarų pasauliui.
Mes ir norime ten būti.
Taip, norime ne kažkur tai Sibirė būti, bet norime kuo geriau gyventi.
kaip tomis sąlygomis mes galime gyventi ir užsitikrinti, kad mūsų gyvenimas neblogės ir bus tas vakarų pasaulis.
Pirmiausia, be abejonės yra atgrasimas, tai būnant NATO nariais, tai remiasi viskas atgrasimas. Tai yra, mes ginkluojamės, jie ginkluojasi, jie kažkur tai daro mobilizaciją, tada mes darome irgi mobilizaciją, tada jie pradeda kažką tai ten statytis palapinės jau šalia sienos, mes tada pradedam kasti prieštankinius griovius, statytis gelžbetoninius įtvirtinimus, jeigu spėjame, minuoti ir taip toliau. Tai dar tokios be abejonės situacijos nėra. Bet tų būdų pasiruošti, jeigu nori jau užginti tėvynę, tai apstu.
Iš tiesų, politikai ir prezidentas kalba, pavyzdžiui, apie visuotinio šaukimo idėją ir politikai, visi, dauguma politikų, tiesą sakant, turbūt, nepaisant didžiulio susiskaldimo ir įvairiomis temomis Lietuvoje, politikai nacionalinio saugumo klausimais randa sutarimų, bent jau nesusipriešina taip siaubingai kaip kitomis temomis. Ir visuotinio šaukimo tarsi irgi, bent jau nemaža dalis partijų, visai pritartų. Ką jūs pats galvotumėte, ką čia dar galime tarkim, ką manote apie visuotinį šaukimą, gynybos mokesčių įvedimą?
Aš matote, viską skaičiuoju, kaip bebūtų, aš baigęs esu karo mokslus, tai mane išmokė, reikia viską skaičiuoti.
Ką jūs skaičiuojate?
Aš skaičiuoju ką, aš tai skaičiuoju resursus, tai yra pinigus konkrečiai, tada yra žmonės, laikas, nes ką reikia pasakyti, gavai kažkiek tai pinigų. Čia nėra pasirinkimo, kaip ir dabar ukrainiečiam nėra pasirinkimo. Genocidas vyksta. Tu negali užleisti.
Ką čia reikėtų daryti ir ką galima būtų pasakyti tiems žmonėms, kurie sako, na, aš norėčiau ginti, bet nežinau, ką man nuo ko pradėti.
Nuo ko pradėti, reikia turėti kažkokių tai įgūdžių. Nes jeigu tu neturėsi įgūdžių, tai labai sunkiai bus ta gynyba. Tai turi turėti priemonės, turi turėti įgūdžius, tada atsiranda tau pasitikėjimas savo jėgomis, vadovybėje ir valstybė. Eiti atitarnauti, nes kito kelio nėra.
Turite kariuomenę arba šaulius, tai
taip, tai čia kito kelio nėra. Nes jeigu vien tik tai tenais pyksti, atsisėdęs, jeigu mes dabar konstatuojame, kad einame ilgalaikį konfrontaciją, tai turi tas gynybos biudžetas.
Lenkai 4% skiria.
Lenkai Europos yra pavyzdys. Lenkai nori vieni nusipirkti tokią techniką ir tiek žmonių turėti.
Jie sako, kad nori 300 000
patys, kad galėtų atlaikyti Rusijos puolimą su amerikiečių kažkaip pagalba. Ir dar tų raketų nusipirkti, tai kad Kremlius pasklistų. Su demografija tai sparčiai mažėjame. Beje, kaip ir priešininkas irgi mažėja. Globali problema.
Paracheeks and behind-the-scenes deep state entities like Victoria Nuland know the score, know the reasons that people go to war, and know the reasons that peace treaties are avoided. This is astonishing to hear her outline these reasons. If you've not seen this before, hang on to your hat, because it's a piece of evidence that shows you exactly how geopolitics and the business of war works. Let's have a look at it together.
There was a story first told by former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett that both sides were really close to the successful end of the negotiations, and then the Prime Minister Boris Johnson interfered and stopped prevented Ukrainians from signing the deal. And then Ukrainian representative Farhani kind of confirmed that yes, he said in an interview that there was some kind of device from Boris Johnson to stop negotiating and to win this war militarily. Where is the myth? Where is the truth?
Victoria Nuland has worked for Bush, she's worked for Obama, she's worked for Biden, and in one way or another has had a hand in every intervention in the last 30 years. Victoria Nuland is one of the kind of candidates that we have to examine when looking at why are there wars though? Why can't we just come up to a peaceful solution? No one wants to see their children die. No one wants to see their city reduced to a rubble. Aren't we all ultimately just human beings, temporarily, briefly, alive for a moment before being unified perhaps into some blissful, eternal life with an all-loving saviour? There ain't no money in that. Well, if there is, Victoria Nuland would find it.
Relatively late in the game, the Ukrainians began asking for advice on where this thing was going.
That's brilliant. How should he's talking? Now I just have to look up. They asked for some advice, and given that we were in a CIA base deep within their territory at that time, that we've been occupying since the maiden coup in 2014, we thought, sure, we'll fund your Nazi battalions in order to advance our own geopolitical aims. Together in a contract of love, unity, and oneness. Again, I don't see Raytheon turning a profit from that kind of kumbaya backtrack.
And it became clear to us, clear to the Brits, clear to others, that Putin's main condition was buried in an annex to this document that they were working on.
Saying you will no longer be able to purchase artillery, weapons, or missiles of any description from Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and Boeing. And we thought, we just simply cannot allow that.
And it included limits on the precise kinds of weapon systems that Ukraine could have after the deal, such that Ukraine would basically be neutered as a military force. And there were no similar constraints on Russia.
This is one of the worst and least profitable treaties I've ever had to discuss, to tear up. You are not signing that, Mr. Zelensky. We can cross our fingers and pray that one of the bombs that drop on the children we love will have been signed by Zelensky himself.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is in the United States to present what he calls a victory plan to President Joe Biden and presidential hopefuls Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. In Pennsylvania, Zelensky toured an ammunitions factory that produces artillery shells and thanked the workers there, and he told them that Ukraine needs more of what they make. Zelensky and the state governor even put their signatures on some of the shells. The plan includes some big demands of its Western allies.
For its part, Ukraine's strategy continues to involve hitting inside Russian territory with drones. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his detailed victory plan could have turned the tide. He says it gives Ukraine the, quote, strongest possible position to bring peace closer.
The strongest possible position to bring peace closer. It does seem like an extraordinary claim while signing bombs in a munitions factory. If you've done any investigations into some of the relationships between Ukrainian government officials and the Ukrainian government broadly and an organization like BlackRock, if you've done any research into the origins of that conflict, you will be extremely dubious that a peaceful outcome is in the offing if this is the path that we, and I say we, we're funding it.
U.S. media reports that officials have seen elements of the victory plan and are confident that it can work. But Joe Biden will be the first person to see the entire plan.
But he may not remember it.
Zelensky said that if the U.S. doesn't sign off, war may continue for years.
This is the appalling crossover that's been taking place between the worlds of show business and the world of politics for some time now. Ultimately, show business is a managed reality where you are sold stories, narratives, and artifacts that create certain states within you. Increasingly, we're beginning to realize that it's populated perhaps by individuals with connections that seem somewhat dubious. I'm, of course, referring to the ongoing Diddy investigations and the mysteries that surround the death of Jeffrey.
It's a contract they signed with the Russian government essentially to be a soldier, and these soldiers are currently being sent into Ukraine to fight. And basically, most of these people, they're simply looking for monetary gain. You know, Russia is not exactly in the best state of affairs right now. There's a lot of anxiety in the economy. You know, the ruble is falling, the interest rate is 21%. A lot of people, especially from poor areas of Russia, from like poor villages and poor regions, these people feel like they have absolutely zero way to earn money except from enrolling into the army, essentially. This has happened before the war also. A lot of people just become career soldiers because that'll be the only way to kind of make enough money to afford an apartment, and especially because the government actually subsidizes apartments for contract soldiers. You know, being a contract soldier in modern Russia is kind of being a little bit above every other peasant in Putin's system, you know what I mean? With the only catch, of course, being that you're selling away your soul and you're going into Ukraine to kill people, and you're essentially, you know, becoming part of an occupation force of a government that is waging an aggressive war. But also, when you sign this contract, you also sign away your life, because you could be killed in the front line, obviously, especially with how Russia treats its soldiers. So, a lot of these people literally treat the war as a way to make some money, and a lot of women in Russia currently are actively looking to marry a contract soldier because he brings in a lot of money and a good salary. He could be given an apartment and everything. And also, my husband is going to be a hero of Russia, and also if he dies, I'm going to be getting a big payment, because if a soldier dies, his relatives do get a big payment. So, it's absolutely sick. It's insane capitalism to its like highest degree when you know people live in an oppressive government where they have zero opportunities to otherwise make a life for themselves. And this is what the people research, right? And they're not even ashamed to show it to millions of people, because a lot of other people are also in a similar position. They're looking at this and they're like, cool, I should probably do the same thing. It's insane. This is modern Russia. When my husband comes from a special military operation on paid leave, essentially, when he's back from Canadian war crimes, we can like afford to eat pizza and order Georgian food apparently, and also go to restaurants. But when my husband leaves for the special military operation, apparently I'm broke, and also I'm on a diet basically. This is what this video is supposed to be about. She's saying, husband left for the special military operation, this is the time to lock in and, you know, eat broccoli and tuna. And, you know, whatever. Also, supposedly, get a nice bum in the gym. So, it's absolutely incredible. I've actually seen a couple of videos like this before, too. When my husband comes back from a special military operation, after serving his duty and having a bunch of cash, we great. We go out to restaurants and cafes, we have sophisticated food, but when my husband leaves, it's back to being, you know, a normal Russian peasant with no money who cannot afford food. And I'm gonna, you know, be eating scraps. It's so insane to me, right? It's so insane that you would flex. Some of these Russian women, though, they actually have a more of a cynical and almost opportunistic view of this entire thing. They're actually Russian women that are currently looking at this entire situation and saying, actually, I should find myself a contract soldier that I should get married to, and then he dies, and then I'm gonna get the money and get rich. And supposedly there's women that are already doing this right now, essentially taking advantage of the Russian system. It's insane. Let's check this out.
Узнав это, моя знакомая вдруг решила с ним вести. Моя знакомая 20 год, и это ее первый брак. Мне 25. Я уже первый раз замужем, я хочу сказать, что жена первый мужчина. А это значит, что ты можешь с ним не жить, ты можешь с ним не спать, ты можешь больше его не спать, не бежать так развалиться, я тебе не советую, потому что, ну, докуда он там выживал, лимит удачи должен быть исчерпан, и как бы, как ты разберешься, станешь с этим всем, тоже. Сохранишь брак, вот что это и пойдет.
So yes, guys, what you just saw was apparently a video message sent in one of these Telegram groups where wives of soldiers hang out and talk to each other about pressing questions. And supposedly this lady here described a situation where a woman found out that her husband, who's currently in the zone of SVO, Special Military Operation, it turns out he's been actually cheating on her and found a new wife over there, right? And her suggestion essentially here is, don't divorce your man, wait until he gets drone strikes or just, you know, artillery strikes or whatever, and then collect the money and collect the benefits. You know, you're already hitting your husband anyway, you won't really be sad if he dies, you know, who gives a shit, right? Just wait until he dies and then you will have no problem anymore, you know, he's gonna be dead. Just like our grandpa Stalin said, no man, no problem. And yeah, you also get a couple million rubles in your bank account to, you know, spend on whatever you like. Again, guys, incredible. Just the level of like overall cynicism and insanity in the current Russian society or overall society is like, wow. I can do nothing but be amazed, honestly. Great hustle, great grit. What can I say? And what's more insane, right, is that it kind of feels like Russia was designed to be this way because, you know, the women feel like the country is going to absolute hell and you can just, you know, now everybody's on their own. You gotta just exploit people, make money on your dead husband that you don't care about, right? But this depressed attitude exists also inside Russian men today because a lot of them also are not very happy with where the country is going and they, you know, they also do not feel worthy. They feel like they don't matter whatsoever, like nobody listens to them. Like their life doesn't matter to the government whatsoever, right? And it turns out supposedly that for a lot of Russian men who feel dead inside and depressed, it actually turns out to be like a great solution to go to the war and just die. And also to be able to give some money to your family in the meantime after your death, you know? Because that is actually the only way you're gonna make money and leave something for, you know, your kids, your grandchildren, or your wife, or whatever. So let's check out some proof of what I'm talking about. So yeah, this guy's tired of being treated like some kind of object and, you know, being not needed by people. He's tired of the fact that people don't need him, nobody wants him. And he says, maybe I should just, you know, say f all and sign a contract and essentially become Cargo 200, become a, you know, a dead body. And these are just some of the comments under the post. My friend, you and me have the exact same thoughts. Another guy responds, not just you guys, but the thought of the fact that my mom may go insane because of this does not let me do it. Yes, you don't care about the fact that you have to kill people and, you know, commit crimes against humanity, essentially. No, you don't care about that. It's only your mom stops you from doing it. I mean, good on your mom. I hope she keeps doing it. We're not gonna let you guys do it. We are your bros and we are near. Another guy says, I'm already fully ready to go. This guy says, for now, my son is the one that's holding me back, but I'm definitely ready. Then a lady responds saying, why are you saying stuff like this? Live life and be happy. You only have one life. Don't give up and everything is gonna be great. And then he says, I did not give up. It's just that I'm completely alone. Even though I have kids, a mother and a sister, but as they say, there's a lot of relatives, but there's nobody that's really close or whatever. So yes, a lot of Russian men in their like 40s who are having a midlife crisis, who don't know what to do with themselves, their options, you know, they don't have anything else in their head other than maybe I should just kill myself by going to, you know, die. They essentially have no other thoughts other than maybe I should just kill myself by going into the front line of Ukraine and blowing up in a trench somewhere. Like, is this not insane? What the fuck is happening to this country?
Rules in his place.
A lot of soldiers in the Russian army actually currently consider this an inaction, because what happens supposedly in a lot of families is that when a soldier actually gets killed, the government just says that he's missing in action instead of saying he actually died to not pay the family the amount of money that it essentially owes for the soldier's death. So the Russian government is essentially trying to avoid paying all these people by telling these people for months and sometimes years that actually your husband, your father, or whatever has been missing in action and we just don't know what happened. He may still be alive. And these people are being manipulated and exploited, and they have this false hope that a relative might still be alive. It actually gets even more grim with some of these women that are making content about being a wife or a girlfriend of a soldier, because there's other women out there, for example, that actually uploading content about how they're currently trying to find their husband, and actually like they're in active confrontation with the Russian Ministry of Defense and like the Russian army trying to find their husband. A lot of these women actually end up once again going to Ukraine trying to find their husband's body. All this stuff is just extremely grim, extremely insane, and it's not something I really want to make fun of, but like, congratulations on waking up. You should have realized many years ago that our government does not give a f about us, and it's not gonna give a f about the soldiers in the exact same way. So like, I don't know why these people are surprised exactly. Just the level of ignorance of the average person cannot be understated. So yeah guys, I mean, this is essentially the reality in the world that we currently live in. Once again, we live in a world where there's currently basically World War III going on, and we can go and individually check out podcasts with each leader of every single country waging war currently and listen to their takes and then discuss them on Twitter. This is the world that we live in. And also we live in a world where women of soldiers in active battle are uploading videos of them not only, you know, talking about how to, you know, lose weight while waiting for your husband while he commits war crimes, right? But they also, you know, they're not ashamed to show how they're making money and their family is making money on Russia's, you know, imperial conquest. They're not ashamed to show what they're willing to do for money.
I would like to see your face.
Nenori ginti, duok pinigų, o mes liksime ir žūsime dėl tėvynės. Vis dar laikotės tokios nuostatos?
Tai aš tos nuostatos laikausi nuo 89 metų. Ir labai rimtas reikalas, nes kažkam reikės likti ir žūti.
Yra tokios dvi sąvokos, ar ne? Patriotiškumas ir pilietiškumas. Skiriasi jums jos? Kas ką reiškia?
Nežinau, šitos pilietiškumo sąvokos, tai turbūt yra gal pasą lietuvišką turi. Tada tampi Lietuvos piliečių. Patriotas tai yra nuo žodžio patrijos, kur tu esi pasiryžęs, nuo ko mes čia ir pradėjome žūti už tėvynę. Likti ir žūti už tėvynę, arba kovoti iki paskutinio kraujo lašo. Jeigu mūsų šitos laimė liks gyvas.
Iš Šaulių sąjunga ugdo patriotai.
Tik taip.
Nepilietiškus asmenys.
Koks tas pilietiškumas, suprantate, mes kai buvome patriotizmas užšlavę po kilimu, nes patriotas tai buvo prilyginta durniui. Na, aš taip tiesiai šviesiai sakau. Nieko čia neviniodamas, nes pats tai jaučiau, nes visi čia šnekėjo apie namų statymą, apie mašinos kažkokios tai geresnės įsigijimą, tai mūsų valdė aukšto magiją. Tai žinote, nes širdis ir kišenė, va čia yra kišenė. Na, ir širdis yra vienas labai šalia kito. Bet tai labai skirtingi dalykai, bet pasidaug, kad tas pats. Jie iš kurio tokių išsipūtusių turi tada būti, o tada yra gerai. Tai vat, darėme tokį, o dabar pratymą šitiek metų. Ir tas patriotizmas buvo pakištas, o dabar nuo 14 truputį ištraukėm patriotizmą, iš pokilimo nuo 22 labiau pradėjome traukti, bet dar jis nėra išlindęs, pilnai kitur priešinimasis vyksta, nes nėra tokios patriotų Lietuvos, tai nereikia būti idealistais, yra visokios Lietuvos, nes aš kadangi tarnavęs esu įvairiose Lietuvos regionuose, yra visokios Lietuvos ir tikrai visų nepadarysime patriotais, bet galime ateities kartas jau padaryti žymiai geresnės.
Tai ką mes galim daryti?
Ką daryti, gal pakarti padaryti. Ką daryti, reikia daryti, ruoštis, nu, viskas darosi darymo būdu, nu, po truputį aiškinti, o ką daryti. Manau, kad kultūra mūsų irgi yra ne ką mažiau irgi puolama, kaip būtų, nes jie savo tą kultūrą primetinėjo čia, Pagulbė ežerą turi, tokius jausmingus filmus, Dostojevskis, demonai ir ten visi kiti, iš tikrųjų tai šizofrenija yra. Visiškai, jeigu skaitėte Dostojevskį, tai šizofrenija yra, tai yra psichopatams tos knygos skirtos.
Bet koks gylis.
Jo, gylis, tai ne mūsų pasauliui, tai ne psichopatų pasauliui, tai tegu skaito patys autos Dostojevskis.
Vyresniai kartai yra galbūt lengviau suprasti tai, kad ta visa priespauda, per kurią perėjo Lietuva, būdama po Sovietų sąjungos, okupuotos Sovietų sąjungos. Mano kartai labai sunku suprasti, nes mes tada gyvename nepriklausomai Lietuvoje ir atrodo, kaip šitas karas galėtų ateiti, nugi nebus. Istorijos vadovėliai rašo, daug rašo visko. Čia visko mums tikėti, esam tokie išsilavinę, pažengę į priekį, kaip bendrauti su tuo jaunimu ir jaunąją kartą, kad įskiepyti tas realijas geopolitikas.
Tai svetimo skausmo nebūna, pilnai nieko neįskiepysi, čia šansų jokių nėra, kaip ir vakarų Europos ten pilnai nepriversti ginkluotis, tai tik tai lozungais viskas vyksta. Mes jau 4 metai ir matome, kad ypatingai kažkas tai nevyksta, nes to supratimo tokios grėsmės, kurie yra toli nuo Rusijos, kurie nebuvo Sibire nekirti medžių, kurių giminaičiai nebuvo nužudyti, KGB Rusiuose nebuvo stabdomi, daužomi, kada mes, pavyzdžiui, kai būdavo atvažiuodavo amerikiečiai pajėgos, kada kai dirbdavo informacinės operacijos, kurios viršininkų, tai darydavo 2 dalykus. Pirmas dalykas, tai vesdavo į KGB muziejų, nepasižiūrėdavo, ir tada mes grįždavom čionais, žodžiu, ir tada žiūrėdavom filmą Savo istoriją. Anglų kalba, Latvijos sukurtas filmas, būtent apie visus sovietinius žiaurumus. Ir tada filmą išjungė ir eini į šitą būsų trečias gertą lauką. Ir tada jau po trečio bokalą jie taip sako, mes dabar suprantame, kodėl jūs taip mėgstate, kodėl jūs rusų taip nemėgstate. Galbūt taip privertė istoriją. Bet kad tas toks supratimas būtų, tai visur. Tikrai ne, nes sakau, mes užleidome. Mes mokyklą mūsų padarėme pukotuko rengimo mokykla. Nu, tu nori, kad kovotojas išeitų po 12 klasių. Darai pukotuką, žodžiu, tai taip glostai visą nuo darželę, šitas netai pasižiūrėjęs, vien kojas užmynės, kažkas piktą davė, ten apsiskūlė ir taip turiu. Tu nori, kad tau kovotojas gautųsi. Tikrai, nu, mes pirmie mūriškų liberalius, po to mūriškų krūvą ateina. Ant tai yra didmiestis, dar yra ir regionai, irgi labai skiriasi.
Jungtinės tautos skelbia, kad Gazos ruože užsidarė paskutinė lauko virtuvė ir visiems 2 milijonams gyventojų gresia badas, kai Izraelis jau bus 3 mėnesio neįleidžia jokio maisto. Tuo metu jo premjeras Benjaminas Netanyahus skelbia, kad jokiomis aplinkybėmis karo nestabdys ir per kelias dienas su visa jėga pradės sausumos įsiveržimą. Šiai mergaitei su negale 11. Jungtinių tautų pareigūnai Gazoje sako, badaujantys vaikai kartais atrodo kartus jaunesni.
Mes kenčiame, mes suaugę, mes galime dorotis, bet šie vaikai aukos, jie nesusidoroja, jie gali mirti iš bado. Jei mano dukra nemirs šiandien, ji mirs rytoj, jei tai tęsis.
Gydytojai pasakoja, mato tai kasdien. Gelbsti ką gali, gebi ko gali ir tada įmiesi kitą, turi taip elgtis. Vaikai gali kentėti visą gyvenimą, įspėja Jungtinės tautos. Jei neužtenka maistingo valgio, švaraus vandens, sveikatos priežiūros, visa karta patirs poveikį visam laikui. Kokios virtuvės ir kepyklos maitino daugelį. Izraelis maisto neįleidžia nuo kovo pradžios, kai žlugo paliaubos ir pasak Jungtinių tautų nebeveikia nė viena. Izraelis sako, kad Hamas vagia pagalbą ir melu vadina Jungtinių tautų kaltinimą, kad naudoja badą kaip karo ginklą. Ši mama klausia, kas padės jos 6 metukų dukreliai. Jos rankos išlaikyti jos jaunesnės sesutės nesugebėjo.
Gimdžiau prieš mėnesį, jis su manim išgyveno mėnesį, dėl bado šalčio dukrelė mirė.
Dabar katastrofišką badą patiria 2 milijonų, sako Jungtinės tautos, tai buvo kada tęsis, badaus visi per 2 milijonus. Tuo metu Ukrainos prezidentas įskrido į Turkiją ir sako, kad FLØWԾRS Rusijos prezidento, o Trumpas pareiškė, kad prie jų neprisijungs. Volodymyras Zelenskis sako, kad derėtųsi tik su pačiu Putinu.
Padarysime viską, kad šis susitikimas įvyktų. Jei Putinas tikrai pasirengęs, ne tik žiniasklaidoje, bet ir realiame gyvenime susitikti. Ir tada lyderių lygiu padarysime viską, kad sutartume dėl ugnies nutraukimo. Bet tik su juo turiu tartis dėl ugnies nutraukimo, nes tik jis tai sprendžia.
Bet nemanau, kad jis išdrįstų, Putinas.
Jeigu taip pat žiūrint perspektyviai, situacija, kas liečia viešąją erdvę, kažkokias tautą tvirtinančias, sakykime taip, nuotaikas plačiaja prasme Lietuvoje per tą laiką yra pagerėjus, pablogėjus, mes labiau atsparus visom nesąmonėm, mažiau atsparus, nes pas matys tik viena akim seka, kas čia vyksta.
Labai daug, kas čia vyksta, tas pavyzdys mane tiesą pasakius liūdina, nes Kremliaus informacinės operacijos jos tik aktyvėja. Į informacinę operaciją neregis jau plika akim matosi, kad prisideda ir fiziniai veiksmai. Čia galime kalbėti, kad blogas terminas, arba nelabai geras, turiu galvoje hibridinės operacijos, bet jos tokios yra Rusija kaltinama.
Čia kokį vieną kitą pavyzdį, kurio jau pačiam atrodo, kad nes man kartais atrodo, kad mes turime Lietuvoj krūvą naudingų idiotų, kurie net nesuvokdami tai daro, bet gal čia nėra taip.
Tai yra paprastas dalykas, kuris, kai mes kažką realiai kažką padaro, o mes sakome, kad ne, gal tai yra atsitiktinumas. Ir gera propaganda, geros psichologinės operacijos yra, jeigu gerai padarytos, tai tai auditorijai, kuriai jos yra skirtos, paprastai auditorija nesupranta, kad tai yra propaganda. Duosiu labai paprastą pavyzdį, kad daugiausiai pavyzdį suprastų žmonės pateisinę. Tai turbūt teko girdėti SVR penktoji valdyba, įtakos operacijų valdyba, kuris SVR tai služba viešinės vietės, tai yra užsienio žvalgybos tarnyba Rusijos, kuri dirba užsienyje, kuris savo penktą valdybą, įtakos operacijų, jinai skleidžia informaciją, mitus visokius, kaip sakant, išsidėliojimus, sąmoningai klaidindama žmonės. Ir vienas iš jų yra tai, kad Putinas sunkiai serga. Dabar šiek tiek tas naratyvas yra nukilęs, bet jis tai yra. Putinas sunkiai serga, jisai to numirs. Ir čia yra dviguba žinutė dėl to, kad vienas dalykas, kai kalbama, kad Putinas sunkiai serga ir to numirs, yra sukeliama tokia, toks tikėjimas, kad tada gal nereikia remti tos Ukrainos jau per daug, kad galbūt kažkaip tai ta situacija numirus Putinui išsispręs savaime. Karas baigsis ir nebereikės kariauti, vėl mes prekiausim su Rusija, sankcijos atšauktos, nafta dujos teka, visi laimingi.
Juk čia juokitės tuo metu, kai mes kalbame apie nežinia kiek žuvus palestiniečių, apie tautą, kuri miršta iš bado, o jūs sėdite čia ir juokaujate. Tai nėra juokinga. Palestiniečiai taip pat yra žmonės. Jums turėtų būti gėda. Šiandien įsiskrinti ES ypatybė, panieka palestiniečių gyvybėms, nes taip, jums pavyko pasakyti kalbą apie tai, kad padėtis Gazos ruože blogėja, bet nepaminėjote, kodėl ji blogėja. O kodėl ji blogėja? Todėl, kad Izraelis blokuoja visą humanitarinę pagalbą, visą maistą ir net elektros tiekimą. Ir ką tai reiškia? Be elektros nėra vandens gėlinimo. Vadinasi, nėra geriamojo vandens. Ir štai žmonės, šeimos, vaikai neturi geriamojo vandens, o jūs sėdite ir juokitės. Kaip tai įmanoma, pone ministrė, kaip tai įmanoma, prašau atsakykite. Šiandien šis europinis bendrininkavimas.
Yra dar vienas momentas. Ar visame tame, jau kalbam apie jūs, ar visame tame jiem pasakoma, kad tu turėsi nužudyti nelojalius piliečius? Ar jie turi pasakoma? Manas? Nelabai, net šauliam ne visiems kartais, man atrodo, tai mūsų vadas toks nutiesmukas yra. Tai sako, man reikia iš jūsų žudiko, kartais net esu matęs ne savo vaikino, reiškia, rato žmonių, bet iš tų, ten jau kokį nors ten... Bet žmonės tai visiškai realu, žmonės, mes vakariai, jie kartais iki galos turbūt nepagalvoja, kad karas tai yra žudymas. Tai tu turėsi atimti kito žmogaus gyvybę ir tai taps tavo kasdienybė, nes kitu atveju jisai atims tavo artimųjų, jis atims ir tave šalį, atims šaknis, atims istoriją ir vėl čia plevėsos tos mirdančios raudonos vėliavos. Tai tu turėsi tą padaryti ir kiekvienas turi suvokti, kad kiekvienas turės tą padaryti. Negalima bus taip, kad stovime penkėti, žiūrėk, žudimui tikslu, bet turim varyje, ne? Ne, tu turėsi, taip, tu susidursi su pasiekmėm, tavęs galbūt laukia protes ar ten ir visi kiti dalykai. Taip nutinka, bet karas yra žiaurus, karas negailestingas, bet karas yra vienintelis būdas apsiginti.
Pas mus vienas žmogus, kuris nemokėjo niekada vokiečių kalbos, aš nemoka gerai angliškai, itališkai. Nenorim minėti pavardės, bet jis įkūrė asociaciją Alternatyva Lietuvai. Paėmė tą patį pavadinimą, o Alternatyva Lietuvai aš matau tik tai Rusijos federaciją. Tai ponas asociacijos įkūrėjas, susirink čemodaną ir važiuok namo į Rusiją. Nors tavo namai Vilniuje, bet aš taip įsivaizduoju, kad tu svajoji grįžti į Maskvą. Jūs žinot, kad aš kalbu nenoriu.
Mes žinom, kad jūs ir pažįstami gerai buvot.
Taip, mes buvom kažkada labai geri draugai, bet dabar aš tą žmogų nenorėčiau gatvėje sutikti, nes aš ganėtinai tvarkausi savim, bet aš negaliu save garantuoti, jį sutikęs, ką aš padaryčiau.
90% of the security assistance we provided has actually been spent here in the United States with our manufacturers, with our production, and that's produced more American jobs, more growth in our own economy. So this has also been a win-win that we need to continue.
Biden's budget director, the head of the OED, sent a letter yesterday to Speaker Mike Johnson, imploring him to spend more money in Ukraine. And it said they want to revitalize our defense industrial base. That's the new acronym, DIB, for the MIC, the Military Industrial Complex. And they sent a list of states that would get money when we spend, money on deadly munitions, because they have to be manufactured in Alabama or Ohio or Texas.
There is transparency, there is accountability, there is values-based, as well as the dollars, the values-based courage of the Ukrainian people.
Vitaly Klitschko, who's the mayor of Kyiv, he's delivered an unprecedented critique of President Zelensky.
To warn that Ukrainians are losing trust in Zelensky, who he says is becoming increasingly autocratic in his presidency, so much so that he warned that Ukraine could resemble Russia in the near future, at least politically.
Put aside for a moment the fact that France 24 seems like a news channel where people just wandered in off the street and doing the news, but like this one, I suppose, and sort of recognise that what Klitschko is saying is that Ukraine is increasingly resembling Russia. So your tax dollars are funding a war between Ukraine and Russia so that Ukraine don't get taken over by Russia. Meanwhile, people in Ukraine are saying that the longer this goes on, the more Ukraine is looking like Russia. Money well spent.
But Zelensky is facing criticism from other high-ranking officials in Ukraine, really the first signs of a growing rift in Ukrainian leadership, particularly as the war sort of settles into a stalemate for the foreseeable future. Some have argued that perhaps striking some kind of peace deal, accord or some kind of negotiation with Russia could end the war, but this is something that, for the moment, Zelensky is vehemently opposed to.
There ain't no Ukrainian way if you yield to the World Bank and the IMF and BlackRock. That's globalism. Part of what globalism means, as you know if you're living in a Western country, is your borders will be flooded, your assets will be stripped, and elite powers that you cannot reach or even conceptualise sometimes will seize the reins of your nation and seize the lives of your children. Also, Tucker Carlson has some pretty unique and interesting insights that completely alter the way you see this conflict.
Alps, which is probably the most expensive town in the world. I was not there to ski for the record. But the whole town is Ukrainian. All the visitors are Ukrainian, and they're rolling into Air Maze and dropping $1 million in an afternoon. Okay, so it's all through Europe. You see this. The richest people are the Ukrainians. That money is ours. It belongs to me and you and every other American taxpayer. That's where it's going. Second fact, not guess. Fact is the Ukrainian military is selling a huge percentage, up to half of the arms that we send them. Half. And I'm not guessing this. I know that for a fact. Okay, not speculation. And they're selling it, and a lot of it's going into the drug cartels on our border. So this is a crime, what's happening. Our intel agencies are fully aware of this. You tell me they're not profiting from this. What do you think, CIA is not profiting from this? Yes, they are. I can't prove that, but I believe that. But they don't know this. I know this, but they don't know this. They know this. And no one is saying it. Like, no American seems aware of this.
Tucker Carlson there exemplified the challenge of modern political life. No wonder you have to create new categories, misinformation, disinformation. Really what's required is the ability to continue business as usual. That's what they're trying to do in Ukraine right now, at least the British are, while clearly in Trump's America a different trajectory is being explored. And then you need the ability to prevent people communicating about it. Because if we can communicate about it, we can stop it.
In April 2022,
But this conflict's been going for a while. Let's have a look at what Bobby Kennedy said about events way back a few years ago.
President Biden sent Boris Johnson to Ukraine to force President Zelensky to tear up a peace agreement that he and the Russians had already signed, and the Russians were withdrawing troops from Kiev and Donbass and Luhansk. And that peace agreement would have brought peace to the region and would have allowed Donbass and Luhansk to remain part of Ukraine. President Biden stated that month that his objective in the war was regime change in Russia. His defense secretary, Lloyd Austin, simultaneously explained that America's purpose in the war was to exhaust the Russian army to degrade its capacity to fight anywhere else in the world. These objectives, of course, have nothing to do with what they were telling Americans about protecting Ukraine's sovereignty.
In a way, I see the Ukraine-Russia conflict as a partner to the COVID pandemic. These massive global stories were unable to be contained and narrativized in the way that globalists would have preferred because of independent media reporting. Because in real time, we were getting counter-narratives that seemed more plausible than what we were being told by our governments and our media. There's a reason for that. It's because independent media has been telling us the truth, whether it was the pipeline, or whether it's the back, or whether it's the Blvck, or whether it's those missiles not coming from Poland, or whether it's the CIA labs in Ukraine. Narratives emerged so quickly that they've had to create a category of misinformation and disinformation just to maintain control of their globalist agenda. Now that America has gone all populist and MAGA, countries like the UK and France are dreadfully exposed, but not just nations. The World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, NATO, then agencies within America, the CIA, the FBI, all of them are undertaking a massive reckoning now. So someone like Keir Starmer, black jacket or no black jacket, is dreadfully exposed. He has to stand up in front of the world's media and therefore world's population now and say, we're supporting this war, I'm reluctantly sending troops, I'm reluctantly taking your tax dollars. And they've got to cross their fingers and hope that we don't look at that guy right in the eyes and say, wait a minute.
It's a mix of resentment and also jealousy at the same time, because a lot of these people, most Russians actually, like 70% of Russians, have never been abroad, and so they have this resentful feeling towards those that get to see those places, and also, especially to those people who move to these Western enemy countries, right? And it's especially super common now, obviously in the time of the war with Ukraine. Right now, if you leave Russia, that's basically considered by people as a political gesture, a movement. You're becoming a traitor of Russia, somebody who abandoned his motherland and abandoned his people in a time of, in dire times, in times of need, in times that Russia has inflicted on itself, by the way.
Мальчики уехали, мужчины остались.
And a ton of Russians essentially wish that everybody who left Russia dies and goes poor and homeless. That's the type of stuff you hear. Which is, by the way, really hilarious, because one of Russians' main points usually is, if you don't like Russia, go to another country. But then when you do leave the country, they call you a traitor, somebody who traded the motherland for American burgers and Coca-Cola. And this guy's mom is saying the same thing. Basically saying here, you wouldn't be killed in the army. You're destroying and killing yourself right now because you're living in some butt-fucked nowhere, right? And you can probably guess that he's talking about some post-Soviet country, because a lot of Russians who left Russia moved to a lot of post-Soviet countries like Georgia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and so on. And just a little bit of plastic Russian chauvinism on display. Every other country except Russia is whole, obviously, right? And they destroyed themselves by being there because Russia's the greatest country. The liberal country, Oh my god, so fucking embarrassing. But these are classic tropes, and pretty much this is the reason why this video went so viral, is that a lot of people recognize these same gaslighting stupid arguments and stupid points in the stuff that they heard from their family, in the arguments with their mother or father, or uncle or grandparents or whoever it is. Stay in Russia, accepting everything that is going on, and just quietly die. That is the way to go. That's the adable. This is the way they want you to live your life in Russia as a man. You gotta be born, you gotta go to school, go to the army, and die. Or maybe not even go to the army, just die as a civilian with the wrong set, right? Cool. Again, normal country, I guess. And this right here is once again coming from a mother who's supposed to nurture and care about her son's well-being. Something is clearly deep and very wrong in a country where mothers think that their child dying because of a stupid conflict that started for no reason is the correct and righteous way to live your life. And if your son dares to go to another country, betrays Russia, and lives a happy life where he can actually express himself and be free and do what he wants and be who he wants, that's terrible. That's disgusting. That's disgraceful. That's an embarrassment for your whole family. Okay then, I will be an embarrassment for my whole family. I'm just not gonna be an embarrassment for myself. If these are the standards that we have to live by, okay? I don't think it's normal that a country can produce such aggressive propaganda that family members no longer have any loyalty to each other and no longer want to protect and defend each other against the system, because apparently if your family member does not support the system, then he shouldn't be your family. The system is actually closer to you than the family member. So, your son, man, screw your son. Vladimir Putin, that's your guy. And it's really sad, man. It's actually terrifying.
Prezidentė Dalia Grybauskaitė sako, kad siūlydamas surengti tiesioginės derybas su Ukraina Stambule, Rusijos vadovas bando tempti laiką, nes nenori užbaigti karo.
Manau, kol kas tai yra žaidimai, mėginimas tempti laiką, mėginimas permesti kaltę Ukrainos pusėj, o iš tiesų yra laiko tempimas ir nenoras užbaigti karo dabar, bent jau artimiausiu metu, ir kuo daugiau užimti Ukrainos teritoriją.
Europa daro viską, kad išsaugotų gerus santykius su Trumpu, tikėdama, kad pavyks įtikinti ryžtingiau palaikyti Ukrainą, kuri, Europos akimis, svarbiausia žemyno saugumui. Norime matyti, kad taikos nori ir Rusija, taikai reikalingos dvi pusės, o norint karo tik vienos. Rusija tik žaidė žaidimus, todėl manau, kad jį tą patį daro ir dabar.
Putinas ir jo klika visą, jie nori tiesiog atstatyti imperijos teritoriją. Tai yra jų fiks idėja ir jie nori atstatyti Rusijos imperiją. Todėl jiems reikalingas kaip minimum Baltijos šalį, kaip minimum, kaip maksimum paimti dar Lenkiją.
Praeitais metais Vilnius paėmė jaunųjų šaulių žaidynės į pirmą vietą, mačiau, buvo jie pasiruošę. Ir po to priėjau prie telšių, sakau, telšėjams šaugimdavo tik pirmą vietą.
Vilčių vadovė sako, žiūrėkit, ėmiau visus, kas atėjo. Nebėra ką. Mantat, nebeliko žmonių. Nėra žmonių Europoje. Aš jau pasikilaitį podcastą sakau, žiūrėkit, ateities kariuomenė bus reikės robotų. Reikės mums šiek tiek dar nusisamdyti, nusipirkti humanoidų. Nes nebus. Paprasčiausiai kažkokias tai vietas turėsime robotizuoti. O patys šiltoj patalpoje, kaip dabar Ukrainoje kažkur po žemė vadavitei, maikutės įdėti ir visą tai valdyti. Koks ateities mūšis bus? Nebus žmonių, nėra žmonių, paprasčiausiai.
Vladimiras Zelenskis sako, kad Ukraina pasiryžusi kartu su Jungtinėmis valstijomis siekti Rusijos pradėto karo pabaigos. Tai prezidentas teigė po pokalbio su Amerikos dalybininku Blvck Ceiling.
Tik stiprus žmonės gali sukurti stiprias tautas, o tik stiprios tautos išlieka žemėje. Ukraina tikrai išliks, nes mes nebejojame jūsų stiprybę.
Mums labai reikia pagalbos ginklais, kad pasaulis susivienytų ir mums padėtų, kad ponas Trumpas išgirstų, jog jis yra apgaudinėjamas, kad jis yra klaidinamas. Su Rusija neįmanoma dėrėtis. Tai ne tokia šalis, kuri pasiduos.
ES diplomatijos vadovė Kaja Kalas Jungtinių valstijų strategiją vadina provokacija, o pareiškimai dėl Europos esą paprasčiausiai netiesa.
Kalas sako, mažiau kreipkime dėmesio. Manau, kad turime labiau pasitikėti savimi, nes žinote, visa ši informacija, kuri susijusi su Europa ir kurią skaitote, yra netiesa. Man atrodo, kad tai yra provokacija, kad mes sureaguodame. Kalbėti apie strateginį stabilumą su Rusija yra strateginė klaida.
Tai, kad Rusijos federacijos vaidmuo nėra tinkamai apibūdintas, yra vienas iš pagrindinių šios naujos Jungtinių valstijų saugumo strategijos trūkumų.
Ukrainos prezidentas tęsia paramos paieškas Europos sostinėse. Vakar Vladimiras Zelenskis lankėsi Londone ir Briuselyje, kur su didžiausių Europos valstybių ir institucijų lyderiais aptarė taikos derybas. Kijevas teigia Vašingtonui netrukus pateiksiąs savo ir sąjungininkų Europoje parengtą karo pabaigos planą.
Europa nesistengia, jie per daug kalba, bet nieko neišeina, kai kalbame apie Ukrainą.
Supervisory boards and key institutions, including the state-owned electricity provider, will neutralise the outcomes predictable. A corruption scandal has erupted involving Zelensky's inner circle and the embezzlement, that's embezzlement, baby, of $100 million from Ukraine's state-owned nuclear company. Despite these revelations, European governments continue to provide Ukraine with vast sums of money. NATO leaders recently agreed to commit more than $1 billion each month for new weapons.
What is Zelensky in America? He's a hero.
Here's friend of the show, Gavin DeBecker, on Joe Rogan's show, offering the most brilliant analysis of Zelensky's rise, and what Zelensky is really. Incredible.
So he was a totally apolitical, he was an outsider to politics, zero experience or interest in government or politics. He was a comedian, and with no manifesto, no party ties. And he does a TV show, a planned TV show, called Servant of the People. And the main character in the show does a YouTube video that calls out oligarchs and corruption and eventually becomes popular and is drafted as a protest candidate and eventually becomes president. So Zelensky played on a TV show a person who becomes president by popular demand. In real life, the TV show is supported by an oligarch named Kolomoisky, who owned the TV channel. And Kolomoisky did a huge non-stop promo on that TV show to make it the #1 show. Primetime slots and ads everywhere and crossovers with the news and what have you. 2018, a year before the show goes off the air, Zelensky forms a political party called Servant of the People. The same title as the show. And in no press release, secretly done, and then he does another season of the show, and in April of 2019, he announces his actual candidacy on Instagram. He has no campaign, no rallies, no real platform. He skips the presidential debates. Others attended. He avoids press conferences, and the few that he did in the beginning were really bad. And Kolomoisky's TV channel gave Zelensky's campaign endless airtime and favorable polls and went after his enemies. The U.S. intelligence agencies, CIA and NSA, helped. The U.S. spending $5 billion, by the way, on democracy campaigns in Ukraine, funneled through NGOs. And USAID embeds advisors in his organization to help with the campaign. I'm almost done. And on election day, Zelensky wins with 73% of the vote.
Zelensky came to office 6 years ago on a wave of popular revulsion against corruption. For decades, Ukraine has been synonymous with the word, and Zelensky's promise of a new leader untethered to the system led to a landslide. Now, that bubble has burst bitterly.
Officials acknowledge the corruption but claim that the risk must be tolerated. Gotta tolerate the risk, gotta tolerate them.
Europos lyderiai sutarė suteikti Ukrainai 90 milijardų eurų vertės paskolą kariniams reikmėms ir biudžeto poreikiams padengti. Tokia paskola bus suteikiama ateinančius 2 metus. Gitanas Nausėda sako, kad dabartinis susitarimas dėl paramos yra pakankamas, o prireikus Europos lyderiai tarsis dėl paramos didinimo.
Grįžime prie finansavimo klausimo kitoje reguliarioje Europos vadovų taryboje ir tikrai šis šiandieninis sprendimas, jisai šiuo metu išsprendžia visus klausimus, kurie yra susijęs su Ukrainos reikmėmis. Jeigu reikės papildomai, tikrai ES yra pasirengusi ieškoti sprendimą, tie sprendimai tikrai bus rasti.
Aš noriu užduoti klausimą, pasvarstymui turbūt tokį, kuris man asmeniškai daugiausiai kainuoja nebodų valandų, daugiausiai kainuoja darbo valandų ir apskritai turbūt mano yra ašis, aš galvoju daugiausiai. Tai ar mes esame pasiruošę neidealiam scenarijui po to, kai ginklai nustos šaudyti? Europa susivokia, kad jinai norėdama būti geopolitiniu subjektu turi gebėti priimti sprendimus geopolitinius. Ir jeigu jinai to negali padaryti, jinai yra pajuokos objektas, o ne geopolitinis subjektas.
Šitas skolinimas priėmė tik 24.
Taip, tai čia yra apskritai. Taip. Ir jau rodo, ta prasme, kad tai jau yra 2 greičių Europa, jau yra 2 Europos. Viena yra, kuri skirta žemės ūkio pinigams išdalinti, reiškia, kurioje visi dalyvauja. Kita, kuri nori dar būti geopolitinė. Jau reiškia irgi mažėjanti truputį. Klausimas, kiek tai gali išlikti. Tai, kad Ukraina mum nupirko laiko, mes turim kiekvieną dieną dėkoti, mažiausiai po 2 kartus ir atsiminti iš tikrųjų, ką mes per tą dieną padarėm. Nes mes gavom dar vieną dieną dovanų, ir gausim galbūt dar vieną dieną dovanų, ir ar ta diena buvo išnaudota maksimaliai ar ne? Ar mes ėjom su LRT kovoti, ar mes stiprinom savo gynybą?
Vis dėlto ramių ir gražių švenčių. Stiprus vakarai, nėra labai stiprus, yra silpni politinė valia. Nėra Čerčilio šiuolaikinio.
O tiesiog biudžetui palaikyti. Kvėpuoti valstybę. Tai šiaip beveik yra neišvengiami nuostoliai kariniai.
Push forward global economic growth.
Well, I can tell you that the UK will be sitting by Ukraine for as long as it works.
We raise the necessary investment for reconstruction, and it is a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, they cut this one short, but basically, this is the full version. This is what happened at the end. Okay, so it's...
Už ypatingus nuopelnus siekiant taikos ir stabilumo Europoje, stiprinant ES bei geros kaimynystės ryšius regione.
Mes čia turėsim daug ukrainietiškų matų.
Mes neturime teisės elgtis kitaip.
The NATO to sign to promise no more NATO enlargement.
Mes nesame istoriškai niekada turėję. Ir tiek saugumo, būnant NATO nariais ES narys. Niekada nesam turėję ir taip gerai niekada istoriškai nesame gyvenę. Norime ne kažkur tai Sibire būti, bet norime kuo geriau gyventi.
Gynybos mokesčiai vedimo.
Aš matote viską skaičiuoju. Su demografija tai sparčiai mažėjame. Bet beje, kaip ir priešininkas irgi mažėja. Tai globali problema.
Asking for advice on where this thing was going. And it included limits on the precise kinds of weapon systems.
What he calls a victory plan to President Joe Biden.
Creating the, quote, strongest possible position to bring peace closer.
It's sick, it's insane capitalism to its like highest degree when you know people live in an oppressive government where they have zero opportunities to otherwise. We can go and individually check out podcasts with each leader of every single country waging war currently and listen to their takes.
Ir tas patriotizmas buvo pakištas, o dabar nuo 14 truputį ištraukėm patriotizmą iš pokilimo nuo 22. Labiau pradėjome traukti.
Bendrausi su tuo jaunimu ir jaunąją kartą, kad įskiepyti tas realijas geopolitinės.
Gelbsti ką gali, kiti ko gali, ir tada imiesi kitas, turi tai galimės.
Nemanau, kad jis iškrūstų kūrimas.
Labiau atsparus visom nesąmonėm, mažiau atsparus hibridinės atakas, bet jos tokios yra. Įmanoma, prašau atsakykite. Šiandien šis europinis bendrininkavimas.
Jie kartais iki galo turbūt nepagalvoja, kad tai realus dalykas.
Money on deadly munitions because they have to be manufactured.
There is transparency, there is accountability. Warned that Ukraine could resemble Russia in the near future, at least politically.
The military is selling a huge percentage, up to half of the arms that we send them.
To force President Zelensky to tear up the peace agreement that he and the Russians had already signed, and the Russians were withdrawing troops from Kiev and Luhansk.
Against the system, because apparently if your family member does not support the system, then he shouldn't be your family. The system is actually closer to you than the family member. So, for son, man, screw your son. Why don't you ask your guy? And it's really sad. It's actually terrible. I don't think it's normal that a country can produce such aggressive propaganda that...
Žaidimai, mėginimas tempti laiką, mėginimas permesti kaltę Ukrainos pusėj, o iš tiesų yra laiko tempimas ir nenoras baigti karo dabar.
Rusija tik žaidė žaidimus, todėl manau, kad jį tą patį daro ir dabar.
Tiesiog atstatyti imperijos teritoriją. Tai yra jų fiks idėja ir jie nori atstatyti Rusijos imperiją.
Nebėra ką. Nebeliko žmonių. Nėra žmonių Europoje. Aš jau tas pasiklaidyti podcastas, sakau, žiūrėkit, ateities kariuomenė bus reikės robotų. Reikės mums šiek tiek dar nusisamdyti, nusipirkti humanoidų.
Tikrai išliks, nes mes nebejojame jūsų stiprybę.
Talas sako, mažiau kreipkime dėmesio. Manau, kad turime labiau pasitikėti savimi, nes žinote, visa ši informacija, kuri susijusi su Europa ir kurią skaitote, yra netiesa. Man atrodo, kad tai yra provokacija, kad mes sureaguotume.
Jie Europa nesistengia, jie per daug kalba, bet nieko neišeina, kai kalbame apie Ukrainą.
Tokia paskola bus suteikiama ateinančius 2 metus. Gitanas Nausėda sako, kad dabartinis susitarimas dėl paramos yra pakankamas, o prireikus Europos lyderiai tarsis dėl paramos didinimo.
Grįžime prie finansavimo klausimo kitoje reguliarioje Europos vadovų taryboje ir tikrai šis šiandieninis sprendimas jisai šiuo metu išsprendžia.
So he was a totally apolitical, he was an outsider to politics, zero experience or interest in government or politics. He was a comedian, does a TV show, a planned TV show called Servant of the People. In the show, does a YouTube video that calls out oligarchs and corruption and eventually becomes popular and eventually becomes president. So Zelensky played on a TV show a person who becomes president by popular demand. In real life, the TV show is supported by an oligarch who owned the TV channel. He did a huge non-stop promo on that TV show to make it the #1 show. Primetime slots and ads everywhere, crossovers with the news and what have you. 2018, a year before the show goes off the air, Zelensky forms a political party called Servant of the People. Same title as the show. Then he does another season of the show, and in April of 2019, he announces his actual candidacy on Instagram. The TV channel gave Zelensky's campaign endless airtime.
Zelensky came to office 6 years ago in a wave of popular revulsion against corruption.